Well, hello, everybody. I just wanted to give you a quick introduction here. We have Deb Miller, who is going to talk to us about bulletproofing your small business. And Life's Copilot is very excited to have her come and help our Life Copilot members and professionals figure out how to avoid some of the traps that it's easy to fall into. So, Deb, I want to let you go ahead and take over and run with this.
Great. I'm glad to be here.
Introduce yourself and your company and stuff as well.
I will. Okay. Who am I? I'm Deb Miller. I'm an Amazon author. I do facilitation for all kinds of groups, including small businesses. My passion is emergency preparedness. And as part of that, I'm a member of the Hamilton County Community Emergency Response Team, which we go out and help at different events and disasters, that kind of thing. I'm also a search and rescue professional. I have a certification and I go out and help people who are lost. I'm a first aid and CPR instructor and a ham radio operator. So I've got all of those fun things. And what does that mean and why is that important for what we're doing here? Basically, I've been helping businesses for more than 25 years work through some of their preparedness activities, getting ready for emergencies, getting their processes and procedures organized so that if something would happen, they would be ready. So basically what I do is business continuity and disaster recovery. So business continuity is how a business is able to maintain essential functions during and after a crisis occurs. Everyone who has a business that has a couple of employees should have some kind of a business continuity plan. For the rest of us, there's some other things we can do. I get questions a lot about, is this the same as a business succession plan? And that no, that is not, it's not the same thing. When you're doing a business succession plan, you're working with an attorney and an accountant, and you're planning those activities in advance in a series of logical, and you're making good decisions in advance on who is going to take over your business in case of a retirement or death or a disability. What business continuity says is, if something happens emergency-wise, can somebody step in and take over your business and help you run it? And with entrepreneurs, that's a big problem, because for most of us, the people that I know who are small business owners, who are single consultants or doing whatever, everything's in their head. They don't have it written down anywhere. It's all, they might talk to their spouse a little bit about what they're doing, but people really don't have a good feeling for what happens in an emergency, or who could take over and actually run your business. So as we're looking at threats in 2022, some of the threats that we're still seeing are COVID related. There's a lot of businesses that have been impacted by COVID, either personally as somebody has been sick, their key employees have been sick, they can't hire employees, those kinds of things. So COVID is still a threat to small business owners. There's also a bigger threat that has to do with mental health and the stress levels that people are feeling because of all of the uncertainty that's going on in a lot of different ways. So we're seeing more and more stress. Employees are having more stress. The business owners are being stressed because of all kinds of reasons, money, the economy, all other stuff. So your well-being in your own personal stress levels can be elevated during this period of time. The supply chain is another big one. Can you get the stuff that you need in order to serve your customers? Now, if you're a consultant or you're doing something as a service, this may not be as big a threat as for somebody who has an actual physical product that they are selling to their customers. So this one can be good and bad depending upon which side of the street you're on. We've also got a heightened awareness about the scams that are coming to us through emails and computers and malware threats and ransomware attacks. Those are all still very high on the list of things that you need to be considering as a small business person. Just think of what would happen if something, when my computer goes down and I lose my internet, I'm threatened because that's where my business is. I live online. And maybe that's something that's your concern, but it also impacts other parts of your life, like your banking and your ability to keep track of your records and your finances and lots of other things. And then, of course, there's always the storms and the tornado threats and the natural disasters that we see, but we also have some man-made disasters that can occur. And the threats in Indiana are not as big. We have tornado threats, and we get straight line winds and bad storms that can come through and take out, a swath of the area that you live in. And it may not affect everybody in the country, but potential threats are not just for you in your location. They could be at a place where your customers are or where your suppliers are. So it's something to consider, that these are real threats. So, okay, so here you are. Everything, all the knowledge rests with you. Everything that you do, if your business is running, if you're become ill or injured, would somebody know how to step in and keep your business running, or could they? You need to have somebody who can continue to send out invoices, somebody who can know where your where your banks are, so that you can keep track of paying your bills on time. What would happen if you couldn't get access to your computer for a week or more? Would that be something that would impact your business greatly? Do you have stuff written down so that if you're in the hospital or somebody is sick, that they could follow step by step the stuff that they need to do in order to make sure that your business continues? And also, do you have a physical copy of your client information? Because if your computer goes down, if you can't get cell service, how are you going to get in touch with your customers? And having a physical copy of their information is going to be critical in some situations. So here's some things to think about. 40 to 60% of small businesses never reopen their doors following a disaster. That seems like that's high, but it's really a small number. And an additional 25% may reopen, but might or will possibly fail within a year of a disaster like that, which is also scary. So that's almost 75% of people, of businesses following a disaster, that have difficulty getting back on their feet. 90% of small companies fail within a year unless they can resume their business operations within 5 days. Because customers they don't care. It's all about what's in it for me. And the more you can be aware of that and how you can help them and make sure that you can keep in touch with them within that 5 days, it's going to make a huge difference. And really, those that are involved in a disaster may not be able to come back to the office to rebuild your business. If you have employees, if people are working from home, the electrical power or an internet connection may not be available to those who are working remotely. And so those are the kinds of things you need to think about. And also think that if you're working with people who are remote, it may not impact your business. A disaster may not impact your business where you are, But if your employee lives in Florida and there's a hurricane coming through, it could still impact your business because the electrical power is not available for people who are working remotely for you. And that's a big thing these days. So are you prepared? And it's, like I said, it's not just you. It's if you have a supplier in an area that's being impacted, do you have a way to get alternate sources for your critical information, your critical business? What if a blizzard is between you and your supplier or your customer and transportation is halted? How will that impact your business? For some people, it won't make a difference because we're all on virtual, but for others, that's a critical consideration. Here's one most of us don't think about is what if your webmaster flakes out and you can't get control of your website or your ad accounts? This happened to a client of mine, and we have spent 1.5 years trying to sort out the logins and the access and who owns the accounts and all of that kind of stuff. So his business is basically, he can't do any advertising because he can't get to his accounts. He can't make any changes to his websites either because he doesn't own that information. So that's, it's not just stuff that happens to you. If a key client has a medical emergency, do you have another person in that company that you've identified that you can talk with? And if it's your main client, is that going to have an impact on your business itself? And what if your bank is subject to a ransomware attack? Do you have all of your finances in one bank, or have you spread it out a little bit so that the possibility is and the risk is mitigated somewhat? So all of these questions. So what should you be doing? And basically, you need to really have your information documented. You want to make sure that you have all of the information gathered up in a place that you can get to it easily. And really, the most important information to start with is your basic company information. So you want to, I have forms that help you gather information such as what's your company name? Are you doing business as something else? Do you have an EIN number or multiple owners on a business? You need to take care, what's your structure of your company? Are you an LLC? Are you an S Corp? Are you a sole proprietor? Are you just doing business as a independent and not have a business structure at all? Do you have company cell phones and company email information, and who are those associated with and assigned to? That kind of information. You also want to make sure that you have, if you have employees, that you have contact information and the information that you need in case of an emergency contact, not just the name and address and the phone number and the social security number and all of that for your employees. Do you have communication information with all kinds of people, like your email addresses, your telephone numbers, your mobile phone numbers, all of that kind of information? And then having client and vendor information that's readily available to you in case you need to get in contact with them if your computer is unavailable or something like that happens. You want to make sure you have your client names and their contact information, maybe details about the kind of business that you do with them. The same with vendor information, who supplies you with stuff. And vendors can be anything from if you have a catering business, who provides you with the food that you need to prepare and serve. It could be a vendor, could be if you're providing website services for someone and maybe you get graphic design done somewhere else. Who are those vendors that provide you with that information? All kinds of information about your business needs to be captured. And, we all have miscellaneous online accounts. We have subscriptions, we have memberships, we have all kinds of things, and all of that information should be documented somewhere. And then, of course, there's your financial information. This is just the start. Who do you do your banking with? Do you have multiple banks? Do you have a credit union? Do you have a savings account and a checking account? Where is that information? You should, as a small business owner, have separate accounts from your personal account to keep all your financial records separate. So do you have you documented where that checkbook is? Where is it located in your house? Do you who's authorized to write checks? All of that kind of information. You may have a brokerage account. You may have an IRA that you've established. All of that information needs to be documented somewhere. Do you have credit cards for your business? Do you know what the number is to call if they were lost or stolen, or if you have a fraudulent charge on your account? All of that is really critical information. And if you have a merchant account where you're accepting payment for products or services that you provide, you need to have that documented as well. And we all pay bills online. That's kind of a given. I think I get one bill that I haven't gotten scheduled to be sent to me online that I still have to deal with. So, and lastly, what's your online presence look like? Where do you back up your computers? Do you have online backups? Excuse me. If you're using a service like Dropbox, or you're using a service like OneNote, or whatever the online service that you're using to get your computers backed up, do you know what the logins are? Can you get to that information? Do you have all the security information that you need to actually do that? And it's surprising. I lost 7 years of pictures on my telephone because I thought it was being backed up to my OneDrive, but it turns out that my OneDrive wasn't accepting pictures anymore because I was close to maxing out my availability. So I had 2 terabytes of service that I could back up. Well, I was getting too close to the end, so they stopped backing up my pictures. So I lost 7 years worth of pictures because of that. So you need to know about your phone and your computer backups and all of that information. Domain registrations is an important piece too, because depending on who registered your domain, you may not own it. If your webmaster registered your domain through his account, you will have trouble getting hold of that. So you need to know who holds your domain, who is responsible for it. You also need to know who's hosting your account. Where is it being, when you register your domain and you set up your website, you have a hosting account, and you need to know where that is and who has responsibility for it. You can put a number of different people on that account, but you need to know and have control of that information. Your social media is another big one. Who can get in and actually update your social media accounts. An autoresponder is who sends your emails automatically to your customers and your clients. So if you have an autoresponder, you need to know where that information is as well. So your digital marketing, your online presence is really critical to make sure that you have access and you know what's going on with it. So safety and storage. So does this make sense?
Yeah, yes, it does.
Okay. So when we're talking about how you're going to keep track of all of this, the easiest way that I found is to put it all in a zippered binder. Just slip the information into pages in your binder. That way you can zip it up, you can grab it if you have to leave your house and leave quickly. One other, and I do this even if I print out my, as I'll show you later, copies of my forms, I use a zippered binder anyway, because what I can do, it usually has like file pockets. So during the year, if there's something I want to add to my binder that I know I want to keep and have available if I need to leave quickly, I can just tuck it in there, and then I can, once a year or twice a year, I can go through those files and update the information that I need, but it's all still there and available. If you use a regular binder like this, sometimes those pages will slip out. You won't be able to tuck as much information in. I suggest that if you document whatever you have, that you put it on a USB drive, and you save a copy of on the you scan your forms and whatever, or your bills or your critical client contracts, any of that kind of information that you need to have. I would scan them and put them on a thumb drive and locate it someplace off-site, whether that's in a bank lockbox, it's with your attorney or your accountant, it's, you know, your oldest daughter, you know, somewhere have that information so that it's not in your house and not in your office location. It's so easy for something to happen to your location and you not be able to get access to it or have information. I know my daughter, a neighbor of hers, their house burned down, and it was almost 2 days before they were even allowed to get back to even start looking for information, and they might have wanted to pull out of that house because it was just too dangerous. Something can happen, you know, your house catches on fire, even if it's not a total loss, you got water damage, you got other kinds of things that you need to be aware of. So having your information stored off-site is really important. I actually keep a copy of my computer downloads in my lockbox at the bank. So it's totally off-site. The other thing is you need to notify trusted people that you have this documentation somewhere and where it's located. It doesn't do you any good to go ahead and gather all this stuff up and say, okay, I got it done, I'm all set, and then not share where that information is with someone you can trust. And again, you need to have access to your information in a way that it's easy to access as you walk out the door. If you have a binder like this, you could even not put the cover on it and call it something like recipes or something like that, and put it on a bookcase with a whole bunch of other things so that it's hidden and not safe, you know, not out where everybody could see what's in it. So those are the things that we talk about in terms of safety and storage. You know, what are you going to do with it? Where is it going to be? How are you going to get access to it later?
Well, your zippered thing that you were just saying kind of reminds me of a bug out bag, you know, for people that are like, you know, they put all their stuff in it for, like, you know, if the zombie apocalypse has, they can take off with it. That makes sense.
Yes, and I do one for my personal information. I have a what I call my life organizer, and that is just all the paperwork information and for my personal life. And then I have this business organizer journal for my business only activities. I keep them separate because not everybody needs to know about it. And there's different kinds of information that need to be captured for both both people. There's a little overlap, but there's not a lot. So what I did is I put together this business organizer journal. It's more than 60 writable PDF forms that allow you to go in and you can type the information in the fields if that's what you want, or you can print them out and handwrite them, whatever makes sense for you. Then what I suggest is you scan the files and the documents or any attachments and put them somewhere safe. And that's where, all the forms come in this. There are a lot of forms that you can use, and not everybody's going to use every form. And some forms you're going to want multiple copies of. So example, if you have 15 clients that are key clients, you want to have 15 pages of your client information that you've saved somewhere. Same way with your vendors and your critical utilities, stuff like that. So that's what I have put together. The next, that's the very basics. The first thing that you should do to help bulletproof your business is get your documentation pulled together. The second part of this is, once you've completed your business organizer journal or you gathered up your information, if you have employees, the next thing you need to think about is a business continuity plan. And I'm talking 2 or 3 employees. If you've got that many employees, you probably need to start thinking about writing your business continuity plan. And basically what you do for a business continuity plan is you look at the risks that your business has, and you take a look at it and you do a self-assessment. Am I prepared enough? And some of this is taken care of as you've gathered your information and created your business journal. But there are some other things that you might need to do, and that's where we come up with an emergency preparedness plan. That plan actually looks at all the things that could happen in your area. So for us living in Indiana, that's straight line winds and tornadoes, storms that take out the power lines for a couple of days. We haven't had a blizzard since 1978, but I lived through that when that was not fun. And, we are in an area that we could potentially have an earthquake that could take out a big portion of the Indiana. We're part of the New Madrid fault line. The last time that went off, they heard bells. The bells in Philadelphia were ringing. It was the shock wave went that way because we're in a different kind of fault line than off the coast. So it could very well damage businesses and communication and that kind of thing. So you take a look at the risks, the things that are a risk, and that could be the pandemic is one of them. It could be other types of, hazardous materials that, are not necessarily at your location, but could be around you. So that's what you do with an emergency preparedness plan. You look at the risks and you figure out ways that you can make sure that your business can continue based on that risk. And then if an emergency happens, what are you going to do? That's your emergency action plan. That says, okay, if a tornado is coming, here's all the things we're going to do and how we're going to make sure that I have my bat and my grab and go binder and I'm out the door, or I know where I'm going to go. I know where we're going to meet up. It's that same emergency planning. What are you going to do if you have to actually live through an emergency? And then a communication plan says, who am I going to talk to? How am I going to let people know I'm safe if I can't make a phone call out, because once something happens, the cell phones get overwhelmed, and knowing that you can send a text message and a text message might get through. You could leave a different message on your cell phone. So if somebody calls and they get a message that says, I can't come to the phone right now, but we're safe, kind of thing. So understanding what your communication plan is going to be, how you're going to get in touch with people who, if your husband or your wife is working downtown Indianapolis and you live in Westfield, how are you going to communicate that you're okay and you're safe? And then I have a emergency preparedness glossary, because there's so many terms and so many acronyms and so many different kinds of things that sometimes it's really hard for people to get through it all. So that's the overall how to bulletproof your business, by making sure that you have everything. You've got the risks considered, you've got your information so that you can continue your business no matter what, or you can pass it off to someone else. The one thing I didn't talk about is you can actually use this business organization journal information if you're getting ready to hire employees and do training. So it isn't just in the event of an emergency. You could use it for other things like training and writing down your processes and making process improvements. So there's a lot of ways that this can be helpful, and that's something that I help businesses with. So I have easy fill in the blank plans for small businesses that help you through the process. I call it the emergency preparedness suite, but it includes all of these 5 different kinds of things for businesses to do. So what should you be doing? How to get started? The first thing I would say is get your documentation in order. I don't care whether you buy my system or not. You really need to start thinking about where all that information is. And even if you just throw it in a box so that you can grab it and go, that would be really the first step if you have to. If you buy my business organization journal, I do a 30-day challenge where I send you an email, which is a video or a small email that says, here's what you should be doing today. And I break it up into smaller chunks over a period of 30 days so that you can actually gather the information and not let it just sit. A lot of us buy this stuff and then we just let it sit because we don't think we have time. But if you can schedule some time and I can help coach you through this challenge, it helps. I have an optional done for you or done with you service. I don't actually do it for you. I kind of help you along and help you make sure that you've gathered it. I can help with the documentation, that kind of stuff. And then I also help small businesses write their business continuity plans. So that's how you bulletproof your business. You get it started. You start where you are and you work your way forward.
Well, that's excellent. I was going to say that how did this become part of your life? What caused something happened, or you wouldn't have been doing this? Most people are not that forward thinking. So
a number of years ago, I had a small business and I was working with clients who had small business as well. I was a coach. I was helping business leaders, with small independent businesses get through and do all of their stuff. And I saw so many of them have struggled when they were by themselves and they were the only person that knew anything about their business. You might have an accountant, you might have a business, an attorney, but they don't really help you with your day-to-day business. And I was coaching people with that. I was also, during Y2K, I was also helping large organizations put together their business continuity and disaster planning. I was working in Fort Wayne at Lincoln Financial Advisors, and I was working with them, helping them with their planning process for that disaster that could happen. I saw a lot of things doing that could apply to the people that I work with, even though they're a big organization and their plans were massive. There are still things people need to do that they can bring it down to a small business and make it work for them. So I did that. And then personally, my husband had a medical emergency 6 years ago now, and he was in the hospital for 2.5 months down here in Indianapolis, and we were living in Fort Wayne, and I had nothing ready. I was trying to run a household from the hospital bed, from the hospital room where my husband was in ICU for months. So all of those kinds of things kind of said, okay, you need to be more prepared. You need to get your life together, get things together. And that's where I started when we moved to the Indianapolis and Westfield area. I saw an ad for the community emergency response team. They were doing classes for getting people prepared in their neighborhoods. So I took that, and that's kind of been my start. I've done this over the years for a lot of different people.
Well, that's cool. I will tell you, I had a learning experience. It was a painful learning experience, but I was VP of sales for a medium-sized builder in central Indiana. And we had two different things that happened that showed us just how woefully unprepared we were. Okay. One was we had our front desk, the girl that worked our front desk decided to go back to college. Well, when she left, no one knew all the things that she was doing because different people over the years had given her things to do. She had just put that on her to-do list, and no one knew who was doing these things or that they needed to be done. And so we had this major fallout later when we had to come back and figure out all the things that were falling through holes. And then additionally, we had our VP of construction who was a walking, talking code book. He had all these code books in his head. He knew, we're starting on unit A through unit F. He knew what all the schedules were, and it was all in his head, and was in a very bad motorcycle accident, was down for like 6 months. And it was panic time, then learning how to recreate these systems that walked out the door.
Yes. I've done a lot of business process improvement and a lot of documenting processes and procedures over the years. My background as a consultant, I have a 6 Sigma black belts, which means I know how to do process and procedures is about it. So I do understand that whole process, and it all kind of goes together. Can you, if you have an employee, do you know what they do? In most cases, you really don't. And even if you have 2 people following the same procedures, they're really not doing it the same way. If you ask them, there are differences in how they manage things. So having standard operating procedures, having identified who is doing what role, how to go about getting that done is all critical to running a small business.
Afterwards, we were all assigned that we had to write down everything we did,
Yeah.
who we called for what the different contact informations were. And it's really hard to just sit down and think through everything you do in a year, and because there's different jobs that are critical, but they may only happen once a year, and making sure that's in the thing for somebody else.
Yeah, I worked a lot with Lincoln, and one of their lines of business wasn't being sold anymore. And there was only one person who managed this line of business for the organization. And that's a big company. And she really was hesitant to even try to document it because she kept saying, I don't do everything. I only do this process once a year. How can I do this? We ended up with 44 procedures that she followed on a regular basis that she only knew how to do. And so by the time we had to document it and got it all together, it worked for them, because then she was able to actually retire in 2 years and actually train other people on the process. So yeah, it's really hard to think about all the things that you do on a regular basis. So if you start small and start writing things down a little at a time, as you do them, it can make the process go a lot smoother. And having a place to put them, like your journal or a grab and go binder, is really, it's in one place. You know where to go to get it. It makes it a lot easier, and it's crucial.
And then you have to make sure you update it when you change procedures.
Yeah, but it's easier to update something than it is to start from scratch.
You made a comment earlier about if your bank gets hostage with ransomware, what if your company does?
That's the other problem. I mean, a lot of small businesses aren't prepared for that. And it happens more frequently than I think we think about. So having some kind of an insurance, liability insurance, or what do they call it? There is a specific kind of insurance that you can get for that. But having your systems backed up, making sure people know not to click on files and emails that they don't know, and never click on an attachment, even if it looks like a bill or an invoice or something like that, if you do not know the email address that's on it. That's how businesses get hacked and that kind of stuff. And having a good backup is really important at that point, and having it offsite or not connected to your internet is crucial.
Well, I will tell you this particular class you just taught today has taught me something I'm going to do the second we get time. Is I've taken over running all the back end of all the different websites that support Life's Copilot. So I now have all these different procedures and things, how to go in and do them all. And I've got a sheet that breaks them down for me, all the links, all the different information. It's on my desktop. It's getting moved into my Dropbox. So at least if something were to happen to my computer, I at least have a cloud-based access.
Yeah. You might look at something like LastPass. They have a storage, a secure storage for files that is similar to what they do for passwords and login information. It's a little bit more secure than a Dropbox folder.
Oh, sure.
It's something that, put it both places. Just make sure you know where you got it, and people can get access to it.
Right. Like I said, I just saw that, if my computer were to go down, now I'm in trouble, but in a few minutes I won't be. So
very important information. I felt so bad for a client of mine, because he had this gentleman he'd worked with for 10 years that did all of his internet, all of his passwords, all of his AdWord accounts. Everything was in this gentleman's name and not in the business owner's. And when he got sick, flaked out, we couldn't get access to any of that information. So make sure you know who owns your web presence. It's a really important thing to do. It's an area most people don't even consider. You put a website up on Wix and you think it's yours. Well, not really.
Yeah. Well, and we have so many, it's like, when I took over running the back end of Life's Copilot, I had no idea how many different separate websites that I have to go in and do things in to make this one website work.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that was an eye-opening experience in and of itself.
Yep. Always.
I would imagine everybody's has circumstances like that. So
they do, even big companies.
Yeah.
Small companies, big companies, it's really hard when it's an entrepreneur or a single business owner. If you're a coach and you don't want to you want to work with your clients, you don't want to do all this back end stuff. And so, if you get have an admin that you work with and they know everything about your business, but you don't, that can be problematic if somebody decides to leave or do something to your business.
I have seen over the years, and I've been in the real estate business for many, many years. And one thing I've seen over and over is team leaders and brokers becoming absolutely terrified of their admin because they don't even know how to get into their websites anymore. They don't know their passwords. They don't know anything. And the admin does it all. And the admin, if they leave, they feel like they just, the place would crumble. So they end up paying too much. They ended up, jumping through all kinds of hoops to keep people and living in their entire life in terror.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally get it.
Yeah. So, because they gave that power because they didn't maintain any systems. So,
right. And if you don't have them documented and written down, they're in somebody's head and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You'll never get it.
Well, Deb, thank you very much for sharing with us. This will be going out onto into our website. It'll be going out to a lot of other areas. This is your information. Great.
That's the information. If people want to get access to the Business Organizer Journal, if they'll email me, I'll give them a special rate for this week for watching this video and paying attention. I don't have it set up so I can give you a coupon code, so I'll have to email you the billing address, the billing information, and how to get the downloads, because it is all downloadable. There's nothing physical to buy. It's all online. So.
Well, I'm very excited about it. This is awesome. So thank you very, very much. I'm going to go ahead and turn off our recording now. So hang on.
Great. Thanks, everybody.